Man finds trapdoor in his home, has no idea what it really is. But before we start, please make sure to subscribe to m&rtv and hit the bell so you never miss any upload from us. Also, leave a like right now. Simon had an uneasy feeling ever since he'd bought this gateway cabin in the woods. And when he discovered a secret trapdoor, his imagination began to run wild. Looking at the hatch now, it wasn't lost on him that this could be the beginning of a real-life horror story. He was the only human around for miles, and the silence was so complete that the only sign of life around him was the sound of his own ragged breath. He just couldn't bring himself to open it. Not yet. Who hasn't fantasized about finding a secret room in their home? Who hasn't dreamed of discovering riches that have been secreted away for centuries? However, most of us, after searching every nook and cranny, will never find anything. However, Simon did. The secret trapdoor in his cabin was certainly worth exploring, but he'd become paralyzed by fear. Simon was thrilled to show his new cabin that he'd purchased for a bargain price off to his friends and family. He prepared coffee and snacks for visitors in his kitchen, but his guests couldn't help but notice that the table had been placed to cover the secret trapdoor. They excitedly asked him what was down there, but he nonchalantly answered that he'd never bothered to look. Of course, he never told his friends the real reason. Simon had moved from the hustle and bustle of the city to write his novel. Surrounded by nature and with only his dog by his side, he thought that he would be struck by some inspiration and be pulled out of the rut he'd been in. He loved his new life and didn't want to uncover something that would ruin it all. So he'd move the heavy table over the trapdoor in the floor. Out of sight, out of mind. It had worked for a while, but now he began to feel uneasy. Every night when he closed his eyes, he saw the trapdoor. He'd have monstrous visions of unspeakable things lurking there, slowly crawling out and down the hall to where he slept. And every night his curiosity gnawed at him, like an itch he couldn't scratch. What was really down there? Eventually he'd had enough, but he wasn't brave enough to do it alone. Simon called a handyman named John to come out and open the trapdoor. When he arrived, Simon pulled out his camera ready to document whatever they discovered in real time on the social media site Imager. He felt safer knowing that netizens would be right there with him. Never had the guts to open it. Handyman came by and was all too eager to have a look, Simon wrote on the site. But as soon as the handyman pried open the door, he regretted it. John the handyman propped the trapdoor open on its hinges and peered down into the darkness. He immediately noticed that the wooden slats underneath were completely rotten and decayed. The stench hit him first, and then he jumped back cursing. Shining the beam of the flashlight were hundreds of eyes staring back at him. A bite from just one of these spiders can rot human flesh, but John forged on to explore further. The cellar beneath the floor smelled like damp and decay. The rusted ladder and damaged concrete around the hole indicated that the trapdoor hadn't been opened in years. The stench of mold and rusting iron combined with another smell that made John and Simon retch. With one hand over his mouth, John shone his flashlight inside once more to get a better look at what lay inside. Suddenly, he saw something scuttle into the shadows. Simon couldn't help but think of every frightening story he'd ever heard about the woodlands that surrounded them, particularly the tales about unsuspecting hikers who had vanished without a trace. Although Simon was frightened, the thought of killing spiders unnecessarily disturbed him. So, with John's help, the pair carefully removed the funnel spiders one by one and gently released them in the woods outside. Now that the spiders had been removed, their view was less obstructed. John began to venture deeper into the darkness and held his breath. John held tightly onto the ladder and carefully descended into the pitch-black cellar below. He made his way around the few spiders that remained, and then his feet reached the damp earth, followed closely by Simon. Looking around the room, Simon gave his followers a live update. "Yeah, creepy," he wrote in his post. "There seems to be a faucet and ventilation. A bomb shelter maybe? Or a cistern?" But just moments later, the pair saw something so grotesque that they froze in their tracks. Simon described what he encountered as unidentified gnarliness. In the corner of the room, John's flashlight revealed the cause of the stench, a concrete trough filled with what looked like a gelatinous mass. The trough was big enough to hold a man, Simon noted with fright. The unidentified substance looked as though it had been there for years. But what was it? And what was it hiding? John tried to figure out exactly what the substance that was emitting the foul odor was, but all he knew was that it was organic, not chemical, and possibly alive. Simon surmised that it could be mold or fungus and tried not to think about the other horrendous possibility. Was it something far worse? Simon was shaking with the fear that consumed him, and his imagination began to run wild again. And this time he couldn't stop it. Was the mass actually human remains? The walls of the trough were also covered with the slimy substance, and then John noticed something that made his stomach turn. The slime had black tentacle-like roots growing out from it. At this new and revolting sight, John couldn't take anymore. He scrambled back up the ladder. He and Simon were petrified of whatever was down there. The men took a few moments to regain their composure, gulping mouthfuls of fresh air like drowning fish. But they had to know what they'd seen. Trembling, they descended once more and were swallowed by darkness.